Connecting. Everyone's joining in. Brilliant. We are live here for our second session at the Festival of Startups. Alex Chisnall here from the Festival of Enterprise, and I'm joined by Anthony Fletcher. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing very, very well. Very excited to be here.
Appreciate you taking the time out to join us today, actually. Much appreciated.
Not at all.
And whereabouts are you in the world?
I am in West London.
In West London. Very nice. Nice day?
No.
Oh, isn't it? It looks like sunlight coming over your shoulder there.
I don't know if anyone's got any suggestions on the lens flare. I don't know. It's not sunny at all. It's a strange optical illusion.
It is indeed. I was going to say it's miserable down here in Poole, actually. It's grey and cloudy. But we just had an awesome session with Lush co-founder Rowena Bird. So those of you who joined that, thank you for taking part and popping your questions. And we're going to do the same here with Anthony. So currently working on the Good Food Fund UK as an investment committee member. But prior to this, for a decade, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were CEO at Graze until summer this year, in fact. And prior to that, a long old stint at Innocent as well.
That's right.
Very good. And how much of a time have you had off, is there such a thing, between relinquishing your duties at Graze and then starting up a new business?
I've been out of Graze for about 3 months. And
okay.
I've got to say, it is just wonderful going back to square one. So I feel really energized, really exciting. You know, it's good to try something new.
And what kind of stage are you at the moment then? Had this been something that you'd been thinking about for a long time prior to leaving Graze, or is it something that's happened in the last 3 months?
Yeah, so I think there's a real benefit from being an entrepreneur and going back and starting again. One, I'm not in any rush. So that means you've got the time to really explore all those important questions which you never have time to look at once the ball starts spinning. So, you know, the consumer and the brand and, you know, genuine R&D. So the area I'm looking at the moment is a bit of a moonshot. It's a piece of R&D which would be genuinely new to the food world globally, which means it's very risky. But the good thing at the moment is it's not a problem if it doesn't work. There's, there's no stakes. So you can enjoy exploring it and, you know, let's see whether it goes anywhere.
Nice. And was that something that had played in? Maybe you can share a little bit about us with the audience then, everybody listening and watching. So for you, what is the aim of the Good Food Fund UK? What would be a definition of success for you, Anthony?
Okay, so I think there's two things going on. So there's the Good Food Fund, which I've become an investment committee member. So this means that I sit in a 4-person team and I sign off who gets money from the Good Food Fund. And the idea of the Good Food Fund is to fund ventures which are combating obesity, especially childhood obesity. And this is something I really care about. I've been involved with Innocent, I've been involved with Graze. They were both kind of better for you food companies. But I suppose I also felt about both of them that they ended up being a little bit elitist, maybe not for everyone. So one of the reasons I joined the Good Food Fund is to really understand what it might take to materially move the needle on obesity in this country. At the same time, I am working on a new venture, which is unconnected with that. And as I said, enjoying the process of being able to look at all those questions with no time pressure. Yeah.
And can you share anything with the new venture with us, or is that something that you're going to release next year or end of this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's early stage. What I will say is I used to be a scientist. So before I did Innocent, before I did Graze, I used to be a scientist. And I really believe that science has a lot of answers for the world. I think scientists are going to save us from COVID. I think scientists are going to help save us from climate change. But I think science in food has a really bad rap, and rightfully. So, what I am interested in is, if you apply cutting edge science to some of the questions, especially around obesity, can you do a good job if you start it off in the right way?
Yeah. And when myself, for example, when I think of like childhood obesity, I got memories of the likes of Jamie Oliver doing campaigns on TV and the such like. Is he still a player in that space? Is he still doing much in that space? Do you know?
Yeah, I think this is what's worrying me. We've had Jamie, we've had Hugh, hugely charismatic individuals. We've had millions of pounds of government funding. But yes, if you look at the stats, it's just not getting much better. And I think this is a very difficult but important, intractable problem. What will genuinely, start to move the UK onto a different trajectory? And, we don't want to follow America. That is not a good health outcome for the UK. So what is the solution to that? I mean, that's what really interests me at the moment.
And I read recently that the last year alone, we've seen an increase of 300,000 new businesses here in the UK. And you're going to be one of them. You're going to be one of those 300,000 starting out. And going to be a number of people watching and listening today who are going to be amongst that number as well. Clearly, we've lost a lot of businesses this year, and we'll continue to lose some as, pandemic or no pandemic. That is the natural order of things in life. Are you an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to economic outlook for business, especially new businesses?
Look, Graze launched this highly experimental service on the week Lehman Brothers collapsed. So, it started with something that many people thought was completely batty, and maybe some people still do, in a week of great turmoil. And I think the good news with Graze was because it was an online platform, it found it very easy to adapt and move with the trends as they played out. And that's always what is the advantage of being an entrepreneur, is that you can respond to the environment which is out there. You can be more curious about your consumer. You can be more passionate about your purpose than most of the companies bigger than you.
Yeah. Very true. And you can move far quicker than the big blue chip companies that literally take a year or longer to actually make a decision.
Or take the risk, really push it into a place where someone hasn't gone before, or have a marketing strategy that is more disruptive but risky. I think these are the sort of tactics you need to embrace, because there's an awful lot of other things stacked against you.
Yeah. And for you, how much are you looking to bootstrap yourself, do a lot of the work yourself, or, maybe looking at the environment you've been in the past 10, 20 years or so and looking to make those kind of first hires?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a really big fan of the whole bootstrap approach. Not just because it gives you control, but also it really forces a clarity, in your mind about those pounds you're spending and what you're getting back and what is important. Can you make an extraordinary product which stands out from the crowd? Can you come up with a marketing message which is viral or highly memorable, or just, far more salient than some of the people that are out there? I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of the people who have succeeded over the last decade have started by bootstrapping, and some of their genius has emerged in those, in that first year when they had so little.
And what have you learned over the last couple of months then, with regards to like what you're particularly good at, and maybe some of the things that you're not so good at that you would be looking to outsource, shall we say, or get help with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've learnt a huge amount, and if you ever interview my poor CFO, he was sort of the polar opposite of me. So, I'm not a completer finisher. I'm not a tool fastidious, and I'm not good at the details. But I can wade through enormous amounts of information on a new market, and I'm sure, like many of the people here, I'm a little bit stubborn. Yeah. So if I think something is better for the consumer, I'm going to push for it. So, working with lots of people at the moment, and that's the most frequent bit of feedback I'm getting at the moment. They're like, wow, you really push us, or, people don't feel as strongly about some of these things as other people who may have employed them in the past.
And understand that, with the Good Food Fund, you're looking to back challenger brands in the food and drink space who are looking to challenge child obesity. I mean, you've worked for two of the probably most iconic F&B brands in the UK yourself. Is there any other brands out there that that you think would be a good North Star for those starting out in business to look at and look to model?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, don't just look at the UK. I think we've got some really good things, kind of going on here. But there's a huge amount of innovation across the globe. And that's innovation not just in terms of product, but also in terms of brands and how they are coming up with novel ways of speaking around trends or to the problems we all face. So you should go and look at Dirty Lemon and what they're doing on mobile. You should go and look at Impossible Burger and what they're doing in terms of science. You should go and look at Halo Top and what they did in terms of a disruptive front of pack message. So yeah, get away from your own backyard.
Yeah, that's good advice. And when you look back at your time with Graze, how much of that did you have as the when you left? Was Unilever that bought stake in the company? Is that right?
They bought it all. Yeah,
they bought it all. How much when you took over as CEO? Were you looking at an exit how many years down the line? Was that part of the process?
Yeah. So Graze was a little unusual. So we actually did two exits.
Okay.
So around 7 years ago, we did a leverage buyout with the Carlyle Group. So a private equity buyout. And then a strategic exit, as you said, more recently to Unilever. So two sale processes over the 11 years. But no fundraising after the initial raise.
Okay.
All self-funded.
And what would your advice be for those starting out? Because it's a common question that we get on here, whether to start small and grow organically, or to take investment on early doors.
I think a lot of it depends on you and your market. But I think if you take the investment, be aware of the pitfalls. There's certain legal pitfalls about the control you're going to have on the business. There are certain pitfalls around investors and their varying motives or their varying skills at being on the board. Don't assume that they are competent or aligned with your own interests, whether they're aware of it or not sometimes. Be very aware that for the vast majority of businesses, you probably want to make a profit at some stage if you want to guarantee an exit. And, beware of what is in the press being a precedent. It's the superstars, it is the unicorns who get more press space. Be sure that that's what you really are or what you really want to aspire to be. I've known a lot of CEOs who've grown £100 million businesses and ended up with zero.
Really?
For all sorts of reasons. And the most common is because they didn't have a clear enough plan for getting to break even. And they got themselves caught out a bit with this, the kind of easy money and the expectations which came with that. At the same time, you're going to lose in some markets. It's the sad reality. Going back many years, Innocent Drinks, we built this fantastic business. It was over £100 million. We built the brand through kind of driving cow-shaped cars around, West London, winning over delis and putting on events. And then PepsiCo came into the market with their smoothie, and they were hugely powerful. So, at the same time, you've got to respect money and what it can do for you. And in certain markets, in some situations, you can lose. But kind of going back a number of years, I was once in Silicon Valley, trying to get my head around this whole, money debate. And our competitor had just raised $75 million. So our US competitor. And meanwhile, we'd just done a leverage buyout. So, we had debt to pay, if anything. We didn't have very much money. And this Silicon Valley venture capitalist went to me, you've got it all wrong, Fletch. He insisted on calling me. He goes, you don't understand, when the Valley backs someone, they win because they've got more money, and we've all backed the American company. But he's freaking wrong. I mean, that company ended up going bust, selling for a pittance. So good companies win out, but watch out at the power of money.
Interesting. And for you, when you're at Graze, and at that time, then when you finished up, say 3 months ago, then and you walked away then, and somebody, I assume from Unilever, took on your role on the board. Did you think it was and still is a good deal for both parties? It was like as far as...
Yeah, I mean, Innocent Drinks is now the largest manufacturer of fruit juice in Europe.
Yeah.
So under Coca-Cola, it's now over, I think, 350 million pounds in size. And I think part of the problem with food is there is this chasm, and it can be crossed, but fundamentally you reach a certain size where it becomes difficult to ascend to the next size. I'm not saying it's impossible. And really you need, some sort of clever deal to ascend to the next level, because money sometimes isn't enough. You need a large sales team, or you need someone who can take a very long-term view on the brand, or you need access to expertise, or you need to scale into 20 countries in 2 years, and it's impossible for you to learn about 20 countries in 2 years. So it's not inevitable, but I think to progress, doing one of these deals is something you need to consider.
And what did success look to you like when you initially took on the role of CEO at Graze? What was, because I remember, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe you can remind me, but you then launched in the US and looked like a very successful launch as well. But what was the kind of definition of success for you as a CEO when you took on that role and you thought, this is what it's going to look like for me, for the brand?
Yeah, I think the thing for me, which always excited me, is I love the food industry. I think it's so interesting, but I also think it's very important and very flawed. And what excited me about Graze was a different way of doing things. How were those trends in technology coming to an industry I loved, quite a traditional industry, and how are they going to change it? Going direct to the consumers, data, iterative innovation, new ways of connecting with your consumers and the tribe. That's what fired me up. So I was always maybe a bit more interested in the nature of the innovative model than maybe I should have been on other things. But that's what drove me.
And how much of that, because I find that really interesting, and those who are starting out or an early stage of the business, what they can learn from that, but how data-driven a business you were, and how quickly you could, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fact that you could create a product and get it out to market in some crazily short period of time. You could probably remind me now.
Yeah, I think at its height, we really embrace this at Graze, this idea that could a food company look more like an ASOS or a Boohoo?
Yeah.
Trialing things, seeing the data and responding. And we built this amazing technology where you could sit in the office and design a product, including graphically, and the factory lines would literally print out the packaging at the same time as, packing the product. So you could launch a product within 48 hours.
Wow.
And, this is how we conquered America. We launched a range of British products, knowing full well that the American consumer didn't want the British products. But instead, what we were putting all our effort into was how were we going to be agile? How were we going to launch new products and withdraw underachievers? And what that meant over 6 months is that we fitted the product range to the American consumer. And do you know what? What happened is similar to, I think, a lot of people have found. When you're led by the data, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. Americans love British chocolate, despite American chocolate tasting very bad. Americans loathed mango chutney. They'd never sell mango chutney to the Americans. They thought it was disgusting. They don't have the same Indian heritage as we do, and fondness.
I know. True, and American chocolate is awful. I agree with you on that one. But you, like you say, when you conquered America, what do you think when you're looking at it as a CEO of Graze and looking at future expansion there? What did you think Graze could leverage from Unilever? What were they best at?
Yeah, I think the big one is they're based in lots of countries. And as Graze went on, we became a multi-channel business.
Yeah.
And there's things which are online businesses are amazing at, not least scaling into lots of territories and having a lot of data and being able to wiggle and change. You can't do that in retail. You need sales relationships and you need detailed knowledge of markets, and you need to get things right first time. And, this is what Unilever could bring to the party. If we wanted to launch in the Netherlands, we'd go and we'd work with the Netherlands team on doing it. And that would increase our chance of success.
And for their point of view, from Unilever's point of view, what were they looking to achieve? Were they looking to make a number of acquisitions in that space at the time? Had they been on your radar for quite a while? I remember chatting to Richard Reed at Innocent, we mentioned before, and him saying that literally, every year they would get another offer, or there would be more interest. There'd be more interest, and in the end, it was like, yeah, we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think there were two reasons Unilever bought Graze. I think one is they were very interested in healthy snacking, and they didn't have any brands in healthy snacking. So Graze was a good way of entering the market, and we were the #1 healthy snacking brand at this stage. So they could go and buy something with a foundation they could buy off. But also they were very curious about the technology. So a large part of the acquisition was them wanting to buy a business that had a presence in multiple channels, and how it thought about that and how it utilized that.
Interesting. And do you think, again, without prying too much into what you're building up at the moment, but would you ever be tempted to go back into that space, into like the healthy snacking space?
Yeah, I think I've done it. So not least Unilever, as you can imagine, have made me sign lots of things.
Indeed.
They don't want me cropping up on their lawn again. And look, I respect that. But also, I think time for something new. I mean, the chance to start again is a chance to ask yourself where society is and where it's going, and to ask yourself, what are you excited about, and what can you find which will sustain you? Both Innocent and Graze took a decade to get to that strategic exit. It's a long haul. Pick something you're interested in. Pick something which is going to fire you up. Yeah,
absolutely. And Rowena was saying that again. She'd been doing this for 40 years, 25 years with Lush, and saying that the challenges that they had during this pandemic. They actually, had to shut everything down for 3 to 4 weeks whilst they got everything, obviously the shops all had to shut with a lockdown, but then their online business, they had to get it, COVID ready, and literally everything was shut down for 3 to 4 weeks. And you think with a business that's like a $1 billion business at that stage, and thinking maybe only a few months previously, they'd all been talking about legacy and how they could, leave the brand to their sons and daughters. All of a sudden they're looking at laying off. I think she said they took 25 million off the wage bill, and the business is actually now in a better position than it was in November last year, pre-pandemic. So do you think, or do you know, for example, at Graze, Innocent, have they had to make many pivots over the last 7-8 months during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is, it's always dangerous to be complacent, and both Graze and Innocent survived some very near misses generally over their lifetime. And some of those near misses are when you're very small, and there aren't a lot of you, and there isn't a lot of money, and there isn't a lot of expertise, and you've got to really make the right decision with very limited resources. Other issues, which, this occurred to both Innocent and Graze, required major pivots or resets, including people losing their jobs. And that's harder in a different way. It's quite hard to get a large organization, to change as much. And it's certainly emotional in a very different way.
Yeah.
So I think, it's never easy. The challenge is just different in terms of what you need to do and what can kill you at the different stages.
And do you say still have a passion for the food and drink space? Clearly, are there any other industries that have piqued your interest that you'd be interested in getting involved in, or if you were investing in, for example, anything else that kind of has jumped out at you over the last few months?
I'm a total nerd, so I love data. And again, this is the danger of being a CEO. You can become too fixated on the things you love. And my God, I loved data, and Graze was an opportunity to bathe up to my neck, in it and roll in it like a pig in mud. So so many exciting things we did on data, and data is always guaranteed to get me overexcited.
Right.
I don't know how people on the call feel the same, but yep, does it for me. Don't know why. It does.
Excellent. A couple of questions that we've got that I've been holding out on that have come in now. Do you feel that the brand values that were originally part of Innocent Drink's USP that made it so communicative were met and enhanced by Coca-Cola? And then a second part to that question, how does this fare for future brands starting out to then be seen as, inverted commas, selling out at times? And that's from Danny.
What an amazing question. No, thanks for that, Danny. So here's an interesting thing. Innocent Drinks, when it sold to Coca-Cola, absolute riot. And people are still talking about it, 11, 12 years later. And people saw it as a betrayal. Graze sold to Unilever. I think we got one email, which asked some factual questions. It wasn't emotional at all. They just a grazer who wanted to know, what was going on. So, I think part of Innocent's success is it really, set out its stall as being kind of countercultural, and against the big guys, and hence why there was so much dissonance when it was purchased. On the brand piece, here's a controversial view. So when you're small, you've got to connect with people emotionally. You've got to win over that tribe of buyers, which are going to underpin your initial sales. You can afford to be a very different brand, and take the risks. I think most brands find that they're not quite as fiery as they get bigger, and some people do obsess over it. And I'm not going to say that's a right or a wrong thing, but your success factors as a large brand are just different. You want mass awareness. You want to very carefully steward the brand, and taking insane risks isn't sometimes a good idea if you're taking the long view. You don't have to. Maybe go for those differences. So, I've seen it as a bit of a pattern. I won't comment, and I don't know exactly how Innocent feel about it, but I would say that owning and stewarding a brand is different depending on how big you are. Yeah.
Good answer. And maybe what are some of the things that you could pull out, reflect back on how you actually managed to do that at Graze? Those things that you were just talking about building that community and getting people engaged and feeling that they're on the journey with you, and seeing, again, like at Innocent, you're saying that kind of emotion that people had when it did sell.
Yeah, and I think this is the key. Innocent was an innovator in certain things. Mainly about how it portrayed itself, the transparency of the brand, what it stood for, CSR and beanbags in offices long before it was cool. I think what Graze got onto first was technology and e-commerce, and recognizing some things around data, but also recognizing that receiving a package can be quite emotional, and people wanted to be entertained, and people wanted to create communities in their offices to swap snacks, etc. And that's what underpinned our brand. Was lots and lots of people tried Graze. Some stayed, many didn't leave, but lots of people remembered it, and remembered it quite fondly, even if they only had one box. And that's why multi-channel worked for us. We perfected a product, and we had that brand reputation. And I think we went into WH Smith travel, and we became the #1 brand in our 3rd week on shelf.
Wow.
But that was because we'd spent 5 years interacting with people in this direct consumer way, just as Innocent spent many years kind of really building its business in those independent delis, and through turning up in a very unique and personal way.
Yeah, it's funny, when I said to my 2 daughters that I was chatting to you today and Graze, and they literally, I miss getting those boxes through the envelope, Daddy, through the letterbox, Daddy. And it literally, like you say, that model has been, you've probably seen it yourself, replicated many times since you were the first in that space. I'm thinking like the likes of like Wild and Bloom, when you're getting like flowers through your letterbox now as a subscription service, etc.
And look, this is the wonderful thing about being an entrepreneur. You should learn and try and spot the patterns in these different models, but watch out on copying them, because the world moves along. Things which were exciting a decade ago, receiving a package, a lot more mundane. So what's next? What is the relevant way to build your business as of this minute? Because it changes, and your ability to recognize this and change it is what I think leads to success.
No, that's a really, really good point. Katie says, with both Innocent and Graze, was there consideration towards food waste and how to reduce it? And will there be in any of your future ideas?
Yeah, I think Graze went off the deep end on this. In fact, we were doing our B Corp accreditation, and this was actually pulled out as a case study. So the food waste at Graze was like a sub-fraction of a % in our own supply chain. So, dwarfed Ocado or, any best practice out there. And the root of it was a couple of things. One, we to a certain extent controlled supply. So we had this wonderful algorithm, which meant that nothing ever wasted. We could always, if a product was going to be wasted, the algorithm would recognize it and make sure the right people got it in their boxes. And we also had these wonderful machines. So Graze had its own factory, which we didn't at Innocent. And I'm a big fan of being vertically integrated. But we built these amazing machines, these weighing machines, and if any product was ever wasted, it would feed it all back into the stream.
Wow.
And that was because it was a natural product and it was very expensive. So it made good economic sense. But our wastage statistics were spectacular. And
did you do that in the US as well then? Did you build your own factories when you expanded there?
We used containers. So it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get to the US, and then we'd fulfill within the US. So we'd have a fulfillment center, which linked into the mighty United States Postal Service.
And again, I'm guessing, Katie says, with regards to that, considerations toward food waste, will there be any in your future businesses as well? Is that something that's probably natural to you now to actually want to do that, seeing how successful that was?
Yeah, I definitely need to consider it. I think the real problem with food waste remains in the traditional channels. Interesting how the category I'm looking at, the dynamics, etc. But I haven't quite got to that. I don't know what the norm is, but I think it's unquestionably a problem for most things that are sold in stores. Yeah.
A question around marketing, which I think is a good one again, and probably relevant to a lot of people who are going to be listening and watching to this. When you start your new co, what would you spend your first £10,000 of marketing budget on?
Well, look, I mean, I would spend it on product, until you've got an amazing product, and then I'd spend it on brand as a way of explaining that product to people.
Great answer. Yeah.
So I no doubt in my mind, the enemy, as I've hinted earlier, is if you've got too much money, then you spend too much money on demand generation, not enough on curiosity around your product. Graze, we sort of had a get out of jail because we could change the product kind of every week and had mountains of data, but it was an absolutely rubbish product to start with. In fact, it was a fresh fruit delivery service. I don't know if anyone on here remembers that.
No, I don't.
And it was an absolute basket case, but it had all these amazing American patents and things because it was quite innovative, but it was not what the consumer wanted. And what actually happened is we had a postal strike. So we couldn't deliver the fresh fruit. So, it's one of those ones where in 2 weeks you scramble and you create a completely ambient product that could go through the mail. Wow. And then, of course, the data came back and we're like, my gosh, they like the thing, which is much easier to do.
Yeah.
So, look, the number of people who succeed with an average product is incredibly low. You need an amazing product.
Yeah. And interested to know when you said like with the food waste being like a fraction of a percentage, how has Graze changed with regards to packaging? And that was again a great conversation we just had with Rowena. That's something she was really passionate about. They're getting like cork from Portugal, driven over by boat on 0 emissions to actually put their shampoos in and all these kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I think we did some things well and some things less well. And then I'll tell you what we realized kind of maybe over 7 or 8 years. So I think if we decided something was really important, we came up with these great solutions. So in the early days, we were really passionate about the box, and we wanted it to be from a sustainable forest, and we wanted it to be compostable, and we wanted it to be recyclable. And we ended up building this kind of crazy set of robots, which actually folded the boxes by hand. And this meant they had no glue in them. And these robots bent the box in 16 different ways. So, kind of hugely innovative, kind of way of, making something which is, more generic these days, but was quite radical back then. So I think we were always very good because we were very innovative when we wanted to do things. Where I think we fell down is we often had blind spots. And again, this is the problem with being a CEO. You're just more drawn to certain things, and maybe what you're drawn to or the team are drawn to, is where the business goes. So, a couple of years ago, we decided to use the B Corp framework. And this surprises lots of people. We used the B Corp framework without actually planning to accredit. We were just like, isn't this awesome? This is just like a massive checklist.
Yeah.
We can go through it and finally we can see what we're good at. And on some things we scored off the scale. And there were whole areas where it was like, my God, we just never really asked that question before. So, for me, the thing which was really brilliant about B Corp was having that more holistic view of what a company does well and less well and putting together a plan, rather than maybe just being driven by passions or, kind of, what the team feels strongly about in any given year.
Some interesting questions coming in as well. James says, how did you use data to improve your emotional connection to customers early on? What can any startup learn from your approach to using data? Great question.
So I think the bottom line is you could A/B tests, and my God, we produced gazillions of adverts. Which again I think is the done thing in any digital marketing now, but also let you take risks. So I found the team at Graze were more conservative naturally than the team at Innocent. Mm-hmm. So the idea of making a cardboard cactus and just slipping it in the box, I thought that was hilarious and really funny thing to do, and a great way to make someone smile. There were many people on the team who didn't think that. And the advantage of the data was you could go back to them and go, no, people like it. People like a nice little surprise, or people actually do want to hear about us and what we care about, or they don't mind if we send them a crap product and they don't like it, as long as they can see it's innovative, as long as they can, because then they're participating in something wider. So, data is a way of, resolving differences of opinion and, norming around the consumer. Does it come with baggage? Yes, a huge amount around over-analysis and analysis paralysis. And there's a time when data doesn't tell you the answer. But it's a damn good place to look to start with.
It is.
Things.
Yeah. Agreed. There's a good question from Tony. When you approached the business to stock Graze, how did you go about selling it to them? Was it to appeal to the environmental impact and goodness of the brand or the product? I think you're going to say product.
Yeah, I think the genesis of Graze was around the convenience of delivery. So hence it used to ship fresh fruit to people. And what we realized was actually pretty quickly it wasn't about the convenience of delivery. The real problem was there weren't healthy snacks out there, full stop.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, we found out after about 7 months that it wasn't about was there healthy snacks out there. It was about healthy snacks out there which people actually wanted to eat. And this is what I mean in terms of the brand, lost a lot of money in its first year and a half. And part of it was we were trying to figure out that value proposition. We didn't hit it out of the park on day one. We had to keep on changing our views and being curious and going, hang on a minute, what's this really all about? And I think it was when we started to realize that our real job was to make good exciting that things started to really motor. People wanted to be entertained by healthy snacks. They didn't want to be reassured that they were healthy. They wanted to enjoy them because snacking is enjoyable.
I've just seen, just got sent a nice big box of it, actually, courtesy of Huel. Julian Hearn and James McMaster over there with their new, instead of, in fact, I've got one of my one of my heels there. But instead of just having like a protein shake or like, like a meal replacement, but then them actually coming out with now snacks where, it's you simply add water, and another come out with like a chili bean and a green Thai curry, and I forget the other one as well. And then you've got the likes of Grenade now being in a similar position when you're at a checkout till, for example, at a service station, or at your local co-op or Tesco's, etc. Interested to know how much of your business then was split on a subscription model, and then when you actually went into the WH Smiths and the co-ops of this world.
Yeah, the killer question. Break down the P&L. So the largest the D2C business in the UK got was probably $60 to $70 million. So UK. What happened is DTC started to go into decline. And it did this for two reasons. One, the Royal Mail privatized and ramped up our prices.
Yeah.
And selling, very low priced items through the mail is a very difficult thing to do. So that kind of took away some of the luster we'd had in those early years. But also, as I said, lots of people enjoyed Graze as an experience. They didn't see it as something that they wanted to maintain for years and years. It was more convenient for us to be in a shop when they were rushing for the underground, or when they were choosing their Boots meal deal. Fascinating research on how many people wanted to pick us up when they went to Tesco, because it was easier than maintaining an additional subscription. So in the UK, we ended up being bigger in retail than in D2C, while it was the other way around in the US.
Yeah. Oh, the other way around in the US. Okay.
Correct.
Huh. Interesting. Do you ever make decisions based on gut feel? And if so, what sort of decisions, or are they all data-based?
Well, I think data helps. I've always found, as I alluded earlier, I'm quite pushy when it comes to things like product quality. So, and again, this is the challenges of different stages. Many uncomfortable moments as a CEO when you're the one in the room saying no to a product launch, or to things that people have spent many, many hours working on, and you have to tell them that you don't think it's good enough. And occasionally they're waving data at you, quite expensive market research. And you're asking yourself, should you go with the consensus? Because that's a healthy thing to do, or should you stick to your convictions? And, be a minority of one, but someone who can veto things. But yeah, the hardest things are always, do consumers really want a product? And that old favorite, advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done so many television adverts now, and it still amazes me how a really good creative idea can game change your brand. And I can point to kind of inflection points, like Innocent and Graze, where really fantastic creative has been game changing. And I can point to millions and millions of pounds spent on advertising, which did absolutely nothing, because it obviously just didn't work.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two areas where I've often found, there's deep problems in that no one's come up with a suitable way to manage those risks completely.
What stage of the journey with Graze, for example, did you entertain going into the world of like TV advertising, for example?
I mean, super early. Look, Graze, we used to place £200 bets on little adverts in the back of magazines, and if they worked, next month we'd double it and do a £400 quarter page.
Yeah.
So I think our first television advert we made for 10 grand, and we spent 20 to 30 grand testing it. So I think certainly if you're in a direct response environment, you can try TV much earlier. But I'm still amazed at all the case studies I'm seeing at the moment in terms of how TV is a key moment for brands. Yeah. But you've got to make a good TV ad. That is the heart-stopping reality of it. No one notices it. No one knows what the brand is. No one gets why it's special. If you're not memorable, you might as well just set fire to the money in your back garden.
And it still does. I was having this conversation with my wife the other night, and I can't remember what we were watching, but it was literally just that moment of realization of going, I have no idea what that advert is about. I have no idea what the brand is going to be about. Who the hell made the decision to actually release this on mainstream TV in an evening slot, you know, the most expensive time.
And I bet you they had some research which somebody was aiming to justify their choice, you know, and, you know, really it was the best advert ever. It was, and they've probably got a piece of research even after it's flopped to justify that it was still brilliant, even though the entire company,
I'm sure,
knows that it stunk.
Right, last couple of questions for you, and we will let you crack on with the start of your week. So Tony says, I didn't realize how data intensive Graze was. Was there any pushback from customers regarding the use of data? And if so, how would you address that?
Yeah, so we never had this problem. And what I put it down to was they got it. If they gave us data, we would give them better boxes. And we'd release new products which appealed to them. And that was kind of what they wanted out of Graze. They wanted cool, entertaining boxes every week, and they thought it was quite fun how we released so many new products, and there were hits and misses.
Yeah.
So I don't think we were ever in that sort of creepy zone that, you know, some companies can find themselves in. Yeah, good answer. Because the consumers understood why we wanted it, and they didn't think it was the most precious. Their ratings on mango chutney, they didn't mind us having.
I love mango chutney. Bernadette from Inside Out Drinks says, when you have a low price product, postage is very expensive. Do you have any suggestions? You clearly did have a suggestion because you moved that into retail. But any other, probably thinking from more of a startup-y. Yeah.
So I'll give you a helpful answer and an unhelpful answer. The unhelpful answer is Graze built its own fulfillment center, which you may or may not want to consider, but my God, it's a slog. But that is one of the reasons why we got it to work. The helpful answer is often as your average order value climbs, your economics look more favorable in terms of posting. So really understanding those breaks, understanding the size of your packs, and then thinking about how you can present that to the consumer in the right way. So the classic, would be something like, for £15 you get free postage, just to get them to spend that bit more, which is in everyone's interest.
Yeah. That's good. Good answer. Okay, Marvin Paul says, how would you personally define marketing?
I think it is the puzzle of getting to the bottom of what the consumer actually wants, which is one, not easy, but also it's a huge team effort across multiple bits of the marketing team and then the entire organization.
Nice.
And yes, I feel I'm still working on understanding what the consumer wants, but also creating organizations that care about what the consumer wants.
Yeah.
I think organizations get super distracted very easily.
Yeah. And maybe finishing up, how have you found the last 7, 8, 9 months personally? Clearly, leaving a business after a decade and clearly leaving it in a better position than when you found it. Have you celebrated those successes yourself? It sounds like you've had a little bit of time out as well, but how's the general experience been? Has it been positive, negative?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is, I think like lots of the people on this call had to manage a business going through COVID, and it was a negative hit for Graze because of how much of the product is on the go, consumed on the go, or oddly, even if it's not consumed on the go, it's consumed on things like family trips. And I found COVID hugely difficult because I'm not a big fan of working from home, and I really like being in the office and working with people, very closely. So there was the stress of a business not performing, but also the stress of having to manage in a very different way, which didn't suit me. So my heart goes out to everyone in this kind of second phase of lockdown, especially if maybe you're like me, you're missing the team and you're not performing maybe as well as you think you can, because you want to be there with them and working with them. In terms of stepping back from Graze, look, it was 11 years. It was a long old journey with many different bits. I think what I reflect on with the most pride is there's a lot of people at Graze who've gone on to start up their own businesses or run businesses hugely successfully. And I'm just so pleased with that.
Yeah.
Because I owe so much to Innocent Drinks. I would not have got as far as I had if I hadn't had this wonderful experience in somebody else's startup. So kind of that's what I look back on and I'm most excited about.
Really good answer. And for you then, what would you say you most looking forward to? I mean, so many people want to close this year down and are glad to see the back of it. For you, maybe finish on a positive. What are you most looking forward to out of the new year in 2021?
Look, I think, I think, as I said earlier, I think science is back. And, I think science is, a force for good, if appropriately used. And, I remain of the view that there are so many problems out there, but we can work out ways of solving them with the right mindset. And, that's what personally motivates me, is this idea of positive change. And I don't know if I speak for everyone on here, sure, you wouldn't have started your businesses if there wasn't a part of it, which, you really do personally want to make that change. And, it isn't just about the money. You want to have that impact and you want to have that real ownership and of a problem.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Good luck with future ventures and good luck with the move as well. And maybe when we're allowed to go out again, I'll pop up the road and grab a beer together.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And lovely to meet everyone.
Appreciate it, Anthony. Take care. Have a great week.